Japan has been for decades one of the most closed-off developed nations on earth, a country where immigration was practically a forbidden word. But today, that same Japan is rolling out the red carpet for thousands of skilled Africans. They are now offering them special visas and designated hometowns in its countryside. This isn't just a policy change, it's a seismic shift because while other global powers from South Korea to Turkey host lavish African summit, we've seen a lot of summit of this kind of relationship with other countries that are not even 5% of Africa's size, resource, and population. But whenever they call, Africa must answer. You know why? In Africa, we have leaders with no vision. Our leaders are trained, like our leaders are programmed to always receive aid. They don't think about what is on their soil. They don't even think about their population, the real human capital. They don't think about it. So whenever they receive this call, they show up. We've seen Russia-Africa Summit. We've seen China-Africa Summit. We've seen US-Africa Summit. We've seen Turkey-Africa Summit. We've seen South Korea-Africa Summit. As the youngest continent on earth, it is a treasure coveted by every other country that is currently facing an aging population. And on top of this is Japan. Japan is seriously facing an aging population. So this is a direct appeal for Africa's most valuable assets, its people. So in this episode, we are going to unpack what this hometown deal really is and how a nation so resistant to immigration was forced to open its doors. And most importantly, whether this is a genuine partnership or just a new, more sophisticated way to solve a rich country's problems with African talent. So we'll also break down what this means for you if you are in one of those choosing countries by Japan. That is, if you are in Nigeria, if you are in Ghana, if you are in Tanzania and Mozambique. These are the 4 handpicked African countries. And I will tell you exactly why Japan handpicked these 4 countries as we make progress in this episode. So let's break it down. It all went down at the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, or you can call it TICAD 9. Amid the usual handshakes and speeches, Japan dropped a bombshell. They announced a massive $5.5 billion investment package for the African continent, a plan to train 300,000 African professionals, including 30,000 in AI, and the centerpiece of it all, the Hometown Initiative. The plan is deceptively simple. Japan has unpicked 4 African nations: the powerhouse Nigeria, the stable democracy of Ghana, the East African hub of Tanzania, and the strategic coastal nation of Mozambique. Each country has been paired with a specific Japanese city, that is, to put it bluntly, cities that are fading away due to aging population. So, Nigerians are matched with the city of Kisarazu. Ghanaians are paired with the city of Sanjo. Tanzanians with Nagai, and Mozambicans with Imabari. So the deal comes with a special visa category designed to fast-track highly skilled, innovative, and talented Africans, from tech professionals to artisans. On paper, it's a perfect match. Japan gets the young, dynamic workforce it needs to keep its regional economies alive. And Africans get a unique opportunity for skills, employment, and a life in one of the most advanced nations. But as with any deal that looks this perfect, the real story is in the fine print and the unspoken motivations behind it. Now, to understand why this is happening now, you have to understand that Japan is in a state of quiet crisis. This isn't about generosity by any stretch of the imagination. It's a survival tactic. Japan is trying to survive their aging population. The nation is facing a demographic time bomb. It has the oldest population in the world, and its birth rate has been plummeting for decades. The consequences are stark, especially outside of the bustling megacities like Tokyo. All across rural Japan, Towns are being wiped out by aging population. Schools are closing. Factories are struggling to find workers, and entire villages are at the risk of disappearing. They call this phenomenon rural flight, and it's creating ghost towns across the country. Japan has realized it cannot fix this problem from within. It simply doesn't have the people. For years, the political establishment resisted immigration, fearing it would disrupt their famously homogeneous society. But reality has a way of forcing your hand. They are now turning to the one continent that has what they lack in abundance: a massive, young, and ambitious population. Africa's youth are not just being invited to work, they are being recruited as a demographic lifeline, a last-ditch effort to breathe life back into the dying heartland of the Japanese economy. Now, this context changes everything, reframing the initiative from an act of partnership to one of strategic necessity. This hometown deal isn't happening in isolation. It's a calculated move in the massive geopolitical chess game being played across Africa. Because for years, the main story has been China's Belt and Road Initiative, a strategy of building massive infrastructure projects funded by massive loans. It's loud, it's visible, and it has brought China immense influence, but it has also been criticized by Western media as a debt trap and using imported labor. Japan knows it can't compete with China's deep pocket, so it's playing a different kind of game. Instead of checkbook diplomacy, Japan is opting for a kind of sushi diplomacy, a quieter, more intimate form of soft power. So while China builds highways and ports, Japan is aiming to build human relationships. The hometown initiative is their secret weapon. By embedding its influence at the city-to-city, person-to-person level, Japan is now creating a network of deep, resilient ties that can be easily replicated. Now, this is a direct counter to both China's model and a perceived decline in American engagement, because since Donald Trump came, we've seen how Donald Trump has gone berserk with Africa. The immigration policy in Africa is a disaster. Trump is not only shipping illegals to Africa, it is banning Africans from entering into America. And you can say the same with the UK. The UK is confused with their immigration policy. Today they are welcoming Africans. Tomorrow they don't want Africans. They don't want immigrants. So Japan is trying to capitalize on this to build their own agenda. So it's a long-term strategy to position Japan not as a lender, but as a trusted partner, securing its influence in Africa for generations to come, one skilled artisan and one revitalized small town at a time. So while African governments and the mainstream media are celebrating the initiative as a win-win, the conversation online, however, in forums and on social media, paints a more complicated picture. Because this is where hope meets the reality check. There's a current of deep skepticism running through the diaspora and Pan-African communities. People are asking the tough questions. Will these Africans just be confined to isolated ethnic enclaves in rural Japan, far from real opportunities in big cities? Many people on social media are doubting that these ambitious professionals they are now recruiting will agree to stay in these small designated towns for long, predicting an internal migration to Tokyo that would defeat the program's purpose. So there is also a serious concern about the burden of integration, because the charter online suggests that the responsibility to fit in, to be accepted, and to bridge the immense cultural gap will fall almost entirely on the shoulders of these Africans. So it's one thing to be invited to a party, but it's also another thing entirely to feel welcome. So while a lot of goodwill exists, especially around cultural exchange, the core fear here is that this is less about integration and more about importing temporary labor to plug a hole with little regard for the long-term social consequences. Now, when I look at the pairings of these 4 African countries to these specific Japanese cities, it reveals something very strategic about Japan. So the pairings between Japanese cities and African nations, they aren't random, they are strategic, because The Kisarazu-Nigeria connection is the most developed, built on the goodwill from when the city hosted Nigeria's Olympic team. So Kisarazu is an industrial city in need of skilled workers, and Nigeria has them in commercial quantities. The Nagai-Tanzania link is the oldest, stemming from a 2-decade-long friendship association, making it a test case for deep, long-term integration. Now to Sanho. Sanho, known as a city of craftsmanship, is a perfect match for Ghana, offering a direct pipeline for Ghanaian artisans to learn world-class metalworking and manufacturing techniques. And the Imabari-Mozambique partnership is pure strategy. Imabari is a key port city, and Japan is heavily invested in developing the Nacala corridor, a trade route that is vital to Mozambique and the wider region. So this partnership is designed to train the human resources needed to run the very infrastructure Japan is helping to build. So each pairing tells a story of intent, mixing pre-existing relationships with hard-nosed economic and strategic goals. These aren't just sister cities. They are strategic outposts in Japan's new policy for Africa. Now, this brings us to the most critical question for Africa. Is this a good deal? The answer will depend on whether it leads to a brain drain or a brain circulation. A brain drain will see Africa's brightest minds live to solve Japan's problems with little to no benefit flowing back home. This is the great fear. Now, the optimistic view, however, is that this could spark a dynamic brain circulation. The vision is that these professionals will gain invaluable skills, experience, and capital in Japan, and then return back to Africa to launch businesses, transferring these technologies and become bridges for future Japan-Africa joint ventures. For example, if a Nigerian artisan learns advanced manufacturing in Kisarazu and comes home to open a state-of-the-art workshop in Lagos, that's a win. Japan's focus on private sector growth and digital skills does align well with the African Union's development goals. But the risk is also immense because the initiative is exclusive to only 4 African countries, creating a sense of favoritism. The continent will be watching closely to see if this program truly empowers its participants to contribute back home, or if it simply becomes a sophisticated state-sponsored pipeline for exporting Africa's talent. So if you are a skilled professional or artisan in Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, or Mozambique, how do you get in on this? The specific application portals and detailed requirements are still being finalized, but the process will be managed through the Japanese embassies in each of these African countries and Japan's International Cooperation Agency. The key will be to monitor their official website for the launch of the special visa category. Applicants will need to demonstrate proven skills and qualifications in sectors needed by their designated hometown. Now, for the final verdict, Japan's hometown initiative is one of the boldest and most unusual diplomatic experiments of our time. It's a high-risk, high-reward gamble. If it fails, it could create social friction in Japan and breed resentment in Africa. But if it succeeds, it could pioneer a new model of partnership, one built not on aid or debt, but on mutual need and human connection. It forces us to ask a fundamental question. Can a nation save itself by opening its doors to a continent it has long overlooked? The world, and especially Africa, is waiting for the answer. Now, if you have watched this video to this point, thank you. I have to say thank you. And I believe that this has given you good value for your time. Now, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about everything Africa. We talk about geopolitics from Africa's perspective, from Africa's point of view. So these are we talk about the kind of things that the mainstream media will not dare talk about. Here, we can talk about it. So if you like this video and comment on it, it will reach a lot of people and it will keep spreading these Pan-African stories in diaspora, within Africa, and anywhere that there is a black person interested in knowing what is happening in the motherland. So if you want to see more of our videos, maybe consider to subscribe and turn up those notifications so that whenever we upload new videos, you'll be the first to get it and be ahead of everything that is happening on African continent. I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.